The Wasp. History of a Small Wonder. Never was the term small but perfectly formed more aptly coined than in the case of Janet Van Dyne, the pocket rocket who became the wonderful Wasp. Spritzed in Pym particles and clad in chic superheroic costumery, Jan rose from the ranks of Ant-Man's other half to leader of Earth's mightiest heroes, the Avengers. Even in death, the legend of the Wasp continues to grow, her very molecules expanding to form a colossal celestial entity. This is one petite princess who will always cast a big shadow. Born to wealth in Cresskill, New Jersey, Janet Van Dyne was raised by her father, respected scientist Vernon Van Dyne. After her mother's early death, Janet, when she returned from finishing school, acted as both her father's hostess at social functions and as his occasional assistant, though she had little aptitude for and less interest in science. By her late teens, this had resulted in Janet's possessing the outward sophistication of a much older woman, but with little life experience beneath the glossy veneer. She also subconsciously resented the role imposed on her by her father. Janet longed for adventure, and eventually received it in abundance. But as the saying goes, be careful what you wish for. Accompanying her father to one of his tedious science things, Janet was introduced to Henry Pym. When Vernon asked Pym's help in interpreting signals he had been receiving from space, Pym declined, saying that it was outside his field, and the trio parted, Janet dismissing Hank as a dull intellectual bookworm. Hank, though shocked by her resemblance to his late wife, Maria, regarded her as little more than a spoilt child. That might have been the end of it, but the signals Vernon Van Dyne was receiving were more than communications. They were the means by which a creature from Cosmos was seeking to invade and conquer Earth. When Van Dyne obstructed the alien, he was destroyed, and Janet, finding her father's body, sought Pym's help once again, this time to avenge her father's death. Impressed by the unexpected resolve of the girl, Henry Pym gave her some of the powers he had developed. He implanted modified insect cells beneath her shoulders and forehead, which, when activated, would generate wings and antennae, enabling her to communicate with insects and fly. The trigger for the changes would be her reduction in size from exposure to Pym particles, as she joined Ant-Man as his new partner, the wonderful Wasp. Together, the pair defeated the creature, the first of many joint victories against foes such as Egghead, the Porcupine, the Eraser, the Scarlet Beetle, El Toro, the Magician, the Human Top, and Madame Macabre. Fighting side by side, the couple grew closer, and while Jan was swift to declare her love for Hank, he held back, fearing to love again, and concerned that his attraction to Jan was based merely on her resemblance to his dead wife. Soon afterwards, Ant-Man became Giant Man, modifying his Pym particles, now in capsule form rather than the previous gas, to allow him to grow as well as shrink. For unknown reasons, Hank Pym didn't offer this option to Janet, a move that caused many to dismiss her as a sidekick, merely a decorative adjunct of Giant Man. However, it was the Wasp's quick thinking that saved the overconfident Hank from defeat several times, and her courage was undeniable. Consider, if you possess super strength, super speed, near invulnerability, and a goddess-given closet of superpowered accessories, it's not so big a challenge to fight crime. Alternatively, when your only powers are to make yourself smaller, albeit no weaker, and fly about a bit, it takes rather more nerve to get out there. But Jan got out there, not only with her size-changing bow, but also as a charter member of a brand new super team. When one of Loki's wacky schemes to gain revenge on Thor went wrong, the Asgardian god of mischief had to contend not only with his long-haired half-brother, but Iron Man, the Hulk, Ant-Man, and the Wasp into the bargain. The assorted crime fighters decided to pool their resources on a permanent basis, becoming the Avengers, a name coined by the Wasp herself, though what exactly they were avenging was never quite clear. After battles with the Space Phantom, Kang, and a series of skirmishes with Baron Zemo and the Masters of Evil, Jan was, ironically, caught by a stray bullet during a battle with Count Nefaria. Critically injured, her life was saved only with the intervention of a gifted surgeon, whom the Avengers had to retrieve from his subarctic alien abductors. Although she recovered, Jan was understandably a bit jaded with heroics, and soon requested a leave of absence from the team. This prompted a string of departures that left new boy Captain America pulling together a substitute roster of reformed criminals and mutant terrorists. But having felt the call of adventure, the Wasp rapidly found civilian life dull, particularly since she still couldn't drag commitment-phobic Hank to the altar. When captured first by a tumor and then the Collector, Jan summoned the Avengers' aid, and she and Hank, by then codenamed Goliath, were soon regular members again. They remained mainstays of the team, but behind the scenes, Jan was having to shore up Hank's emotional instability. Hank's self-image relied on his intellectual prowess and the physical power that it gave him. Yet, in the Avengers, and their superheroic cohorts, the Fantastic Four, X-Men, and so on, he was comparatively low on the totem pole, surrounded by his physical and intellectual superiors. A freak chemical accident finally caused his tormented psyche to shatter, and he developed an alternate personality psychosis, becoming the dashing adventurer Yellow Jacket, a carefree rogue with none of Goliath's hang-ups. In this persona, he wooed the Wasp and claimed to have killed Hank Pym. But the Wasp, not fooled for a moment by his disguise, played along with the delusion. Despite her colleagues' disbelief and outrage, she married Hank's murderer, and when the circus of crime crashed the party, they shocked Hank back to his right mind. For the newly married couple, it was a happy ending, at least for a time. The marriage, Jan's wisecracking assurances notwithstanding, was of course not legal, as the bridegroom was both under an alias and out of his mind during the wedding. A subsequent ceremony ratified the omission, and the Pyms departed on their honeymoon. They returned for a few adventures, with Hank keeping the Yellow Jacket name and ceding the Goliath persona to fellow Avenger Hawkeye. But it wasn't long before they left again, with Jan moving Hank away from the superheroic world that he found so stressful. Occasionally, the pair was seen on the fringes of big team-ups, or brought back when a special finesse was needed. But for the most part, they lived quietly. Perhaps they should have stayed that way, because as soon as they responded to a call for new members, the Wasp was injured by the stranger. She spent months hovering on the brink of death, followed by a lengthy recuperation before she could resume her membership. This period marked the Wasp's longest time as an active Avenger. Her powers grew and developed, her experience and knowledge enabling her to rise to the rank of chairman of the world's mightiest heroes. But as her professional status increased, her personal life hit the wall. Hank's underlying insecurity, exacerbated by unexpected side effects from years of exposure to Pym particles, resulted in his becoming increasingly erratic, aggressive, and paranoid. He concocted a false menace in order to portray himself as the hero of the hour, and when Jan protested, he struck her. He was subsequently expelled from Avengers and divorced by his wife. Jan threw herself into the team, consolidating her position in both the original Avengers and a successful spell in the West Coast team. Despite fleeting romances with fellow Avengers Iron Man and the Black Knight, and a short-lived fling with mercenary Paladin, Jan's heart nevertheless belonged to Hank. Eventually, the two established a halting reconciliation, becoming first friends, then romantic partners once more. During the time-spanning event of The Crossing, Jan was once again seriously injured. In order to save her life, Hank had to put her through a similar process to that which originally gave her powers. The secondary mutations caused by the process were catastrophic. She emerged with an insectile exoskeleton, compound eyes, huge antennae, and an appearance resembling nothing so much as, well, a flying shrimp. Jan had always been tinkering with her look, but this was too extreme, even for her. Veering into depression, she was rescued from self-loathing only by the Onslaught event, in which she and dozens more of Earth's greatest heroes seemingly sacrificed their lives. In reality, they were shunted into an alternate universe where they remembered nothing of their previous lives. But still, they held true to their heroic legacy. The psionic powers of Franklin Richards eventually returned them to their own world, and Janet mercifully to her human appearance. Initially, she and Hank were reservists in the reconvened Avengers, but inevitably, Jan returned to the team full-time. One decision, however, she wasn't prepared to rethink. When Hank, flushed with romantic ardour, proposed to her again, she declined. This caused a temporary split, and Jan rebounded into the arms of Hawkeye for an affair that was purely physical. Shortly after his proposal, Hank Pym was replaced by a Skull impersonator, one of many sleeper agents planted on Earth months or years prior to the secret invasion. The new Hank reconciled with Jan, giving her a modified version of his size-changing serum to enable her to grow to giant size. Jan demonstrated this ability for the first time in the UK, much to the astonishment of her teammates, when the Avengers ran across Kelsey Keel Kirkland, the new Captain Britain. Despite the increased power, Jan never seemed comfortable with her giant stature, and indeed appeared rather clumsy. After a few initial experiments, she reverted to her preferred fighting size of a couple of inches, holding back the growth power as a last resort. Following the events of Civil War, when the superhero community was divided and suspicious, Tony Stark decided that a new Avengers team was needed to carry the standard. The Wasp was one of the earliest recruits to the mighty Avengers, serving valiantly against the Mole Man, Ultron, the Venom Plague, and others. But unbeknown to Jan, a time bomb was ticking. The growth serum Hank had given her was a booby trap, to be used if and when the Skrulls' covert infiltration of Earth looked like it was failing. That time came. The secret invasion was discovered and escalated into open warfare. On the brink of defeat, the Skrulls triggered the formula. The Wasp became a bio-bomb, growing rapidly and uncontrollably, releasing bursts of devastating energy from her colossal form. Realizing that she had been sabotaged, Jan nevertheless tried to flee the battlefield and save her comrades' lives, while taking as many possible of the enemies with her. Before her final demise, Thor opened a cosmic vortex so that the force of her explosion would not take innocent lives. 3 times in the service of the Avengers, Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, had cheated death, but the 4th time claimed her. Released from the Skrull ship, the real Hank Pym realized that, with her death, he had lost forever his chance to make amends. In tribute to her, he took the name of the Wasp and founded a new team of mighty Avengers to continue in a heroic tradition. In an almost metaphysical tribute to his lost love, Hank also established an extra-dimensional headquarters, the Infinite Avengers Mansion, in her eye. In the alternate dimension known as Underspace, the exploding molecules of the Wasp's body continued to expand, becoming a colossal cosmic entity. The Infinite Mansion serves as a dimensional harness, preventing Jan's particles from dispersing any further. Perhaps Hank hopes one day to bring her back, in the incredible universe they inhabited together for so long. Well, stranger things have happened.